I've always been an observant man. That's how I built my construction company from nothing but a second-hand pickup truck and a toolbox. You notice things, a hairline crack in a foundation, the slight wobble of a load-bearing beam, the way a contractor's eyes shift when they're lying about materials. After 57 years of life, 40 of them spent sizing up job sites and people, very little gets past me. So when Melissa leaned over my shoulder at Sunday dinner, her manicured hand hovering a moment too long above my coffee cup, I noticed. I noticed the slight tremor in her fingers as she pulled away, the forced casualness of her smile when she asked if I wanted pie. But I didn't react. Instead, I took a sip and watched her over the rim of my cup, the bitter tang beneath the cream and sugar unmistakable. My son David married Melissa 5 years ago. She was beautiful, charming, 15 years his junior, and I had my concerns from the start. Not that I voiced them. David had lost his mother to cancer 3 years prior, and the light had gone out of his eyes until Melissa came along. Who was I to question what had brought my son back to life? Besides, Karen, my late wife, would have scolded me for being judgmental. "Everyone deserves the benefit of the doubt, Jack," she would have said. I set the coffee cup down on the dining table that Karen and I had saved for months to buy when we were first married. The same table where we'd celebrated birthdays, Christmases, where I'd helped David with his homework, where I'd grieved when Karen was gone. My home in Lakewood, a modest suburb outside of Denver, wasn't fancy, but it was paid for, comfortable, with mountain views that Karen had fallen in love with. "Are you feeling okay, Dad?" David asked, his fork paused halfway to his mouth. At 38, he looked more like me every day, same square jaw, same crinkles around the eyes when he smiled, though he had Karen's gentleness. He was doing well as a financial advisor, had a good head on his shoulders, or so I thought. "Just tired," I replied, pushing the coffee away. "Been a long week at the site." Melissa's smile didn't reach her eyes. "You should think about retiring soon, Jack. A man your age shouldn't be climbing around construction sites." I nodded, non-committal. I'd semi-retired 3 years ago, leaving the day-to-day operations to my longtime foreman, Mike, but I still consulted and visited the sites regularly. It kept me sane after losing Karen. "David and I were talking," Melissa continued, her voice honey-sweet, "and we think you should consider selling this place. It's too big for just you, and the stairs can't be good for your knees." This wasn't the first time she'd brought it up. The housing market in Denver had exploded in recent years, and my 4-bedroom on a quarter-acre was worth nearly triple what Karen and I had paid for it in the 90s. "I'm doing just fine," I said, the same answer I always gave. David looked uncomfortable, staring down at his plate. "It's just an idea, Dad. We worry about you out here all alone." I didn't miss how Melissa squeezed his arm, a silent signal that he was saying the right things. My coffee sat untouched as we finished dinner, and I poured it down the sink when they weren't looking. After they left, I sat in my recliner in the dark, thinking. Whatever Melissa had put in my coffee wasn't meant to kill me, at least not immediately. I wasn't naive enough to think it was nothing, but I wasn't ready to confront them either. I needed to understand what was happening in my own home, under my own roof. The next morning, I called Mike and told him I'd be taking some personal time. Then I drove to the hardware store and bought several small security cameras. I'd installed plenty of them at construction sites over the years to prevent theft. Never thought I'd be putting them in my own home to monitor my family. I positioned them carefully, one in the living room bookshelf, aimed at the couch and entry, one in the kitchen that covered the table and counters, and one in my home office, where I kept important documents. They were small, wireless, and uploaded to cloud storage I could access from my phone. I felt a bit ridiculous, like I was playing detective in my own life, but the bitter taste of that coffee lingered in my memory. For 3 days, nothing happened. I reviewed hours of footage of an empty house, feeling foolish. Then, on Thursday afternoon, while I was supposedly at a doctor's appointment, I'd mentioned to David on the phone, my front door opened. David and Melissa entered, using the spare key I'd given them years ago. I watched on my phone from the parking lot of a nearby McDonald's, heart pounding as they moved through my house with purpose. They weren't just checking on me. They went straight to my office. I watched as Melissa sat at my desk and began opening drawers while David stood lookout at the door. She pulled out folders, thumbed through papers, took photos with her phone. My will, property deed, insurance policies, bank statements, all documented methodically. Found it, she said finally, holding up a paper. The retirement account statement, almost $900,000. She whistled low. And the house is worth, what, $750,000 in this market? David shifted uncomfortably. Mel, maybe we shouldn't. Shouldn't what? Plan for the future? Her voice had an edge I'd never heard when I was present. Your dad is getting older. These things happen. We need to be prepared. He's only 57, and he's healthy as a horse. Melissa stood, walking to him with a sway in her hips that changed David's expression immediately. But accidents happen, baby, especially to older men who insist on climbing around construction sites. My stomach lurched as she pressed against my son, her arms around his neck. Just think we could finally get that house in Cherry Creek. Start the business you've always wanted. No more kissing ass at the firm. I know, but your mom would want you to be happy, wouldn't she? To have the things you deserve. She was using Karen against him, and it made my blood boil. Besides, your dad's been alone long enough. Don't you think he misses her? Wouldn't it be a kindness, really? I nearly dropped my phone as the implication hit me. It wasn't just about getting my money, she was talking about killing me, making it look like an accident or perhaps something more subtle. The coffee. How many times had I accepted drinks from her in recent months? David pulled away slightly. Jesus, Mel, don't talk like that. He's my father. I'm just saying, nature takes its course. We should be ready. She gathered the papers, putting everything back as she'd found it. The medication should start working soon anyway. Dr. Phillips said it builds up in the system, makes it look like early dementia. A few falls, some confusion, and everyone will think it's time for a home. You'll have power of attorney, and we can take it from there. My hands were shaking as I watched my son's face. For a moment I thought, hoped, prayed, he would object, would see the monster he'd married. Instead, he sighed and nodded. Okay, but we go slow, and we make sure he's comfortable, promise me that. Of course, baby. She kissed him, and I had to look away. I just want what's best for us. For our future. They left shortly after, locking up behind them as if they hadn't just plotted my demise in my own office. I sat in that McDonald's parking lot for nearly an hour, trying to process what I'd witnessed. My own son, Karen, would be heartbroken, but I wasn't Karen. I wasn't gentle or forgiving, not about this. I was Jack Mercer, who'd fought his way up from nothing, who'd survived losing the love of his life, who'd built something with his bare hands that someone else now wanted to take. And I'd be damned if I'd let that happen without a fight. I drove to my doctor's office, a real appointment this time. Dr. Phillips, my physician for the last 15 years, was shocked to see me without an appointment, but his nurse squeezed me in when she saw my face. Jack, what's going on? He asked when I sat in the exam room, still wearing my work boots and flannel though I hadn't been to a site in days. I need a full toxicology screen, I said, and I need to know if you've spoken to my daughter-in-law recently. His confusion seemed genuine. Melissa, no, why would I have? He studied my face. Jack, what's this about? I told him what I'd overheard about the coffee, about their plan. His face darkened as I spoke. That's disturbing and illegal. If someone is poisoning you, we need to call the police. Not yet, I said firmly. I need proof first, and I need to know what she's been giving me. He nodded slowly. We'll run a comprehensive panel. But Jack, if what you're saying is true, you need to be careful. Don't eat or drink anything they give you. I left with bandages in the crooks of both arms and a promise of results within 48 hours. On the drive home, I called the one person I knew I could trust implicitly, Mike Sullivan, my foreman and friend of 30 years. I need a place to stay, I said when he answered. And I need your help with something that's going to sound crazy. Mike didn't hesitate. My guest room is yours. What's going on, boss? I told him I'd explain when I got there. As I packed a bag at home, moving quickly in case David and Melissa returned, I tried to quiet the roaring in my ears, the disbelief that my own flesh and blood could betray me this way. But construction had taught me one valuable lesson. When a structure is compromised, you don't ignore it because the truth is inconvenient. You face it head-on, assess the damage, and decide whether to repair or rebuild from scratch. Mike's face grew stonier with each detail I shared as we sat on his back deck that evening, beers in hand. His modest ranch-style home in Arvada was comfortingly familiar. I'd helped him remodel it years ago when he'd divorced his ex-wife. "Jesus Christ, Jack," he muttered when I finished. "Are you absolutely sure?" I showed him the video on my phone. Watched his expression change from disbelief to disgust as he heard Melissa's words, saw David's weak protestations crumble under her manipulation. "I've known David since he was a kid," Mike said, shaking his head. "I can't believe he'd go along with this." "Grief makes people vulnerable," I said, thinking of how broken David had been after Karen died. And Melissa knew exactly how to exploit that. Mike took a long pull of his beer. "So what's the plan, police?" I shook my head. "Not yet. I need more evidence, and I need to understand how deep this goes." I looked out at Mike's neatly kept yard, the garden his new girlfriend had helped him plant. "And I need to figure out how to save my son, if that's even possible." Mike nodded. He understood loyalty, understood family. He'd been there through Karen's illness, had practically held me up at her funeral when my knees threatened to buckle. "Whatever you need, Jack, I'm in." The next day, I called a lawyer, not the family attorney who drafted my will, but Diane Reeves, a sharp-eyed woman who specialized in elder law and financial abuse. I'd met her when her firm hired us to renovate their offices downtown. "This is very serious, Mr. Mercer," she said, after reviewing the video in her office. "What they're discussing could constitute attempted murder, conspiracy, and financial elder abuse." "I'm not elderly," I said automatically. At 57, I could still outwork men half my age on the site. She smiled slightly. "In legal terms, Adult Protective Services would classify this as elder abuse regardless. The law recognizes that family members often try to take advantage of relatives as they age." She leaned forward. "You have good evidence here, but we need more, and you need to protect yourself in the meantime." I left her office with a plan forming. I would need to document everything, gather irrefutable evidence, and set a trap that would reveal their true intentions beyond any doubt. It would be the most difficult project of my life, rebuilding my future while dismantling the illusion of family I'd believed in. That evening, my doctor called with the test results. "Jack, we found traces of benzodiazepines in your system, specifically a medication called Ativan. It's not something I've prescribed for you." My hands tightened on the phone. "What does it do?" "It's an anti-anxiety medication, but in older adults especially, it can cause confusion, memory issues, lack of coordination. Falls are common. Sustained use at higher doses could mimic cognitive decline." Just as Melissa had said, making it look like early dementia, setting the stage for David to take control of my affairs, my property, my life. "Is it traceable? If someone were giving it to me without my knowledge?" "Yes, especially with repeated exposure. We can document the levels in your bloodstream, hair samples, and track any changes." He paused. "Jack, have you gone to the police yet?" "Working on it," I replied. "I need everything documented properly first." I hung up and stared at the ceiling of Mike's guest room. I'd built my company from nothing, had weathered recessions and construction disasters, had survived losing Karen when I thought the pain would kill me. Now I needed to construct something else entirely, a case against my own family and a future beyond the rubble of what I'd thought we had. The following week passed in a blur of careful planning. I pretended nothing was wrong, met David and Melissa for dinner twice, declining coffee each time with complaints about heartburn. I watched Melissa's frustration grow with each opportunity lost, saw how she whispered to David when she thought I wasn't looking. Meanwhile, I visited my bank and changed my accounts, removing David as a secondary signatory. I met with Diane again and revised my will, leaving everything to a trust that would benefit charitable causes Karen had supported, with a small provision for David that would only activate if he divorced Melissa. I documented my mental acuity with neuropsychological testing that showed no signs of dementia or cognitive decline, and I kept watching the cameras. 3 weeks after the coffee incident, David called. "Dad, we're thinking of having a family dinner at our place Saturday. Nothing fancy, just us. I'm grilling steaks." "Sounds good, son." I kept my voice casual, though my heart was pounding. "Need me to bring anything?" "Just yourself." 6 o'clock, I agreed and hung up, then immediately called Diane. "They've invited me to dinner," I explained. "This could be our opportunity." "It's risky," she cautioned. "If they suspect you know." "They don't," I assured her, with more confidence than I felt. Melissa's been getting frustrated that I haven't been drinking her special coffee. She'll try something else. Diane was silent for a moment. We need one of our investigators there, someone who can document what happens, and you'll need to wear a wire. The words felt surreal, like something from a TV crime drama, not my actual life, but I agreed. We made arrangements, and by Saturday afternoon, I was sitting in a nondescript van with a private investigator named Ramon, who was fitting me with a small recording device. This will capture everything within about 15 feet of you, he explained, helping me attach the small microphone under my shirt collar. Try not to touch it or adjust your collar too obviously. I nodded, hands steady even as my mind raced. Ramon would park down the street from David and Melissa's upscale townhouse in Washington Park, monitoring the audio feed. Another investigator would pose as a food delivery person shortly after I arrived, planting a small camera in the potted plant by their front door. If anything goes wrong, if you feel threatened or ill, use the code phrase, "Karen always loved these steaks," Ramon reminded me. We'll call the police immediately. I drove to my son's home feeling like I was entering enemy territory, not a family dinner. The townhouse was elegant and modern, purchased 2 years ago when David got a promotion. I'd helped with the down payment, $50,000 that represented months of Karen's careful saving for our retirement. She'd insisted David should have it after she was gone. He'll need a fresh start, she'd said. I wondered what she would think of how that fresh start had evolved. Melissa answered the door in a flattering blue dress, her smile perfect. Jack. Right on time. She leaned in for a hug, and I forced myself to return it, to smile back as if I didn't know she was plotting my death. Something smells good, I said, following her inside. David's out back with the grill. I'm just finishing up a specialty cocktail I've been wanting to try. Bourbon old-fashioned with a twist. My stomach clenched. Sounds great. The townhouse was immaculate as always, with high-end furniture and art that seemed designed to impress rather than create comfort. Photos of David and Melissa covered the walls, with just one small picture of Karen tucked on a side table. I felt her absence acutely as I moved through their space. David looked up from the grill on their small patio, a genuine smile crossing his face. For a moment, I saw my little boy again, the one who'd followed me around with a plastic hammer, determined to help Daddy work. Hey, Dad. Steaks are almost ready. I clapped him on the shoulder, searching his face for any sign that he was aware this might be the last meal he'd ever share with his father if their plan succeeded. I found nothing but the same warmth he'd always shown me, though perhaps tempered with something like guilt around the edges. Looks good, son. Melissa appeared with 3 glasses on a tray. Here we are. A special treat. I took the offered glass, noting it was slightly different from the others, a bit cloudier. Cheers, I said, pretending to sip while actually letting the liquid touch my closed lips. We ate on the patio, the Denver evening pleasant despite the tension I felt coiling within me. I carefully avoided actually consuming anything, hiding small bites in my napkin, moving food around my plate, pretending to drink while actually pouring small amounts into the potted plant beside me when they weren't looking. How's the company doing, Dad? David asked, seemingly genuinely interested. Strong, I replied truthfully. The new development contract in Boulder is our biggest yet. Melissa leaned forward. That must be worth a lot. Have you thought about selling the business? You've worked so hard for so long. I noticed David shift uncomfortably. Mel, Dad's not going to sell his life's work. I'm just saying it must be worth millions now. Jack deserves to retire completely, enjoy the fruits of his labor. I took another fake sip of my drink. Actually, I've been thinking about the future lately. Both their heads snapped toward me with such sudden interest that it would have been comical under different circumstances. Oh, Melissa's voice was carefully casual. I'm considering some changes, might even sell the house, look at something smaller. The look that passed between them made my skin crawl, triumph, poorly disguised. That's a great idea, Dad, David said eagerly. We could help you look at condos. There are some nice retirement communities too. Communities? I raised an eyebrow. I'm not ready for a nursing home just yet, son. No, just modern buildings with amenities. No maintenance worries, people your age around. My age, I repeated, watching him squirm slightly. You make me sound ancient, Melissa smoothly interjected. David just means you deserve comfort and security. Actually, I noticed you seem a bit unsteady lately. Are you feeling okay? I put down my fork, looking directly at her. Funny you should ask. I've been having these strange episodes. Confusion, dizziness. My doctor's concerned. David frowned, and I couldn't tell if his worry was genuine or part of their act. Why didn't you tell me? What did the doctor say? He ran some tests. I paused, watching them both carefully. Found some unusual substances in my system, prescription drugs I've never taken. The color drained from Melissa's face so rapidly it was almost shocking. David looked confused. What kind of drugs? Benzodiazepines? Ativan, specifically. Apparently it can cause symptoms that mimic dementia in older adults. I kept my voice conversational. Strange thing is, I've never been prescribed Ativan. The silence that followed was deafening. Melissa recovered first. How bizarre. Could it be a mix-up at the pharmacy? I don't take any prescriptions that could be mixed up, I replied. Dr. Phillips is quite concerned. Mentioned elder abuse, actually. Said sometimes family members. That's ridiculous, Melissa cut in sharply. Who would possibly do such a thing? I looked her directly in the eyes. That's what I've been trying to figure out. David was looking between us, confusion giving way to something darker as understanding began to dawn. Dad, what are you saying? I'm saying someone's been drugging me, son. And I think you might know something about it. Melissa stood abruptly. This is absurd. David, your father is clearly confused. This is exactly what I've been worried about, these paranoid delusions. I remained seated, oddly calm now that the moment had arrived. No delusion, Melissa. I have the test results, and I have videos of you discussing how to steal my money and property once I'm declared incompetent or dead. The glass slipped from David's hand, shattering on the patio. What? I installed security cameras after I caught Melissa putting something in my coffee 3 weeks ago. Caught quite an interesting conversation between you two in my office. Something about medication building up in my system, making it look like early dementia, a few falls, some confusion, and everyone will think it's time for a home. Melissa's face contorted with rage and fear. You've lost your mind. David, he's having some kind of breakdown. But David was staring at her now, horror dawning on his face. Mel, what is he talking about? He's confused. This is exactly what I warned you about. Karen always loved these stakes, I said clearly, giving the signal. Then I turned back to them. The police are on their way, and yes, I've been recording this entire conversation. Melissa lunged for the door, but I was faster, blocking her path with a strength that surprised even me. You're not going anywhere. What followed was chaos. Melissa screaming accusations, David demanding answers, the sound of sirens approaching. When the police arrived, followed by Ramon and another investigator, I handed over the recording device calmly. The drink she gave me tonight should be tested as well, I told the officer. It's the one I didn't consume. They took our statements separately. David's shocked face as they questioned him will haunt me forever, the moment he realized the woman he loved had been using him to try to kill his father. When they led Melissa away in handcuffs, she spat venom at both of us. You'll die alone, old man, and you, she turned to David, you're pathetic, just like your father. I could have given you everything. In the aftermath, sitting in the police station at midnight, David broke down beside me. Dad, I swear I didn't know she was drugging you. I knew she talked about your money, about what we'd do when you were gone, but I thought it was just talk, just planning for the inevitable years from now. His voice cracked. I never thought she meant. But you went along with it, I said quietly. You let her manipulate you. He couldn't meet my eyes. She has a way of making things seem reasonable. After Mom died, I was so lost. Melissa made everything clear, simple. She said we deserved more, that you would want us to be happy. By stealing from me? By drugging me? No. I never agreed to that, but the rest, planning for your estate, thinking about what we'd do with the inheritance someday. He wiped his eyes. It sounds horrible saying it out loud. I don't know how I let things get so twisted. I didn't know either. But as I looked at my broken son, I remembered what Karen would say. Everyone deserves a chance at redemption, even David, especially David. The days that followed were a blur of legal proceedings. Melissa was charged with attempted murder, conspiracy, and elder abuse. The evidence was overwhelming, the recordings, the drugs in my system, the detailed searches on her computer about undetectable poisons and inheritance laws in Colorado. David cooperated fully with the prosecution, though he too faced charges of conspiracy. His lesser involvement and cooperation meant he would likely avoid jail time, but his reputation, his career, his life as he knew it was in shambles. I sold the house in Lakewood eventually, not because Melissa had pushed for it, but because it felt tainted now. I bought a smaller place closer to the mountains, where Karen and I had always talked about retiring. I restructured my will again, setting up a trust for David that would be managed by Mike until David completed therapy and demonstrated he could make sound financial decisions. The construction company continued to thrive under Mike's management. I consulted occasionally, but found new purpose in volunteering with an organization that helped elderly victims of financial abuse, people who, unlike me, hadn't caught on before it was too late. 1 year after that fateful dinner, I sat across from David at a coffee shop downtown. He looked older, thinner, but clearer somehow. The therapy had been good for him. "The divorce was finalized yesterday," he said, stirring his coffee absently. I nodded. Melissa had tried to manipulate the system even from jail, claiming David had been the mastermind, then offering to reconcile if he would support her defense. When that failed, she'd fought for half of everything in the divorce. She got nothing. "What now?" I asked. He shrugged. "Start over. The firm won't take me back, not with all the publicity, but I've got some interviews lined up with smaller companies, and I'm continuing with the therapy. It helps." I studied my son's face, Karen's gentle eyes, my stubborn jaw. He'd made terrible choices, had nearly cost me my life, but he was still my son. Still the little boy who'd helped me build birdhouses in the garage, who'd cried in my arms when his mother died. "There's an opening at the foundation," I said carefully. "Administrative work, nothing financial yet, but it's a start." Hope flickered across his face. "You'd trust me with that, after everything?" "Trust is earned," I replied, "but everyone deserves a chance to rebuild." As we sat there, tentatively finding our way back to some new version of family, I thought about what Karen would say. She'd be heartbroken by what had happened, but would remind me that forgiveness isn't about excusing the past. It's about creating space for a different future. Melissa would serve at least 15 years in prison. The investigation had uncovered previous instances of financial manipulation, including an elderly neighbor in her hometown who had mysteriously changed his will in her favor before his death. Justice had been served, but justice isn't the end of the story. It's just the foundation upon which you build what comes next. Like any construction project, you start with clearing the debris, excavating down to solid ground. Then you pour a new foundation, stronger than before because now you know where the weak points were. I sipped my coffee, prepared in plain sight by a barista who had no stake in my demise, and watched my son struggle toward redemption. It wouldn't be easy for either of us. Trust, once broken, is the most difficult thing to reconstruct. But I was a builder by trade. I knew that with the right materials, the proper care, and enough time, almost anything could be rebuilt. Not the same as it was before, but sometimes, if you're careful and lucky, even stronger. David looked up, meeting my eyes directly for the first time in months. "I'm sorry, Dad, for all of it." "I know," I said, and I did. Outside, Denver's skyline gleamed in the afternoon sun, buildings I'd helped construct standing tall against the mountain backdrop. In this city, I'd built a life, a family, a legacy. Parts of it had crumbled, but not all. Not the foundation. I was 58 years old, still strong, still sharp, still standing. Melissa had thought she could take everything from me, but she'd underestimated what decades of hard work had built. Not just my wealth, but my resilience, my attention to detail, my unwillingness to crumble even when the structure of my life was threatened. Most importantly, she'd underestimated the power of the truth. Because while lies can stand for a while, eventually they show their cracks. And I've always been good at spotting cracks. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left.